Hi, I'm Jermaine Wilson, and I'm from Prison Fellowship. I want to thank you for tuning into our YouTube channel. The video you are about to watch was made specifically for an incarcerated audience, but we are excited to share with you a glimpse of the hope and encouragement Prison Fellowship is bringing into prisons across the country. Thank you for watching.
We're here today to talk about a conversation that is very near and dear to our hearts. So I wanted to spend some time just introducing ourselves to you and just bringing you into the conversation. Ladies, it's such an honor for me to be here with you, each one of you today. We share common ground of previous incarcerations and the victories and the hurts and the shames that go with that. So I just kind of want to start this morning by asking each of you individually if you'd introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, about your experience with incarceration, and why you're here. Joy, let's start with you.
Yes. Hi, my name is Joy Block Wright, and I am from Tulsa, Oklahoma, born and raised in Tulsa. Got into some trouble early in my 20s, and I went back and forth to prison several times between California, Oklahoma, and Texas. I have two children, and that's why women that have children while they're incarcerated or children that have incarcerated parents is near and dear to my heart, because during my incarceration, I had two children, and they're adults now, age 24 and 25. And, you know, during the time when I was incarcerated, I wanted to make sure that they were being taught the right things, and I didn't feel like anybody could do that with me, but that was when I had my aha moment to where I didn't want to return back to prison again, because I didn't want other people to raise my children. So that is why talking to and reaching out to people that have children while they are incarcerated, both men and women, you know, I'll give it, but mainly to women, because we're nurturers by heart. So it hurts not only the children, but also the person that's incarcerated, because we are separated from our children. So being from Tulsa and by Oklahoma being a state that has a large number of incarcerated women, it was something that I felt like I needed to do. So I reached out, and we have Walter's Way, which is a nonprofit organization helping people, as well as Prison Fellowship. So we partnered together with Prison Fellowship to do things.
Okay. Thank you, Joy, very much. We'll talk some more about that here shortly. Teresa, can we hear from you this morning? How did incarceration?
Yes. Good morning. My name is Teresa Stanfield, and I have two children. I got into drugs and alcohol at a very, very young age of 12, and that progressed until in 1993, I was introduced to heroin and ended up in prison. So I spent 20 years in and out of prison, jails, institutions, treatment centers, things of that nature. And so I have, just being incarcerated for that length of time and in and out, my children were not a big part of my life, and I had to spend a lot of time away from them during my incarceration. So I have a lot to share on that today. So
thank you, Teresa.
Yes.
Chanda, I appreciate you being here this morning. Can you just tell us a little bit about how incarceration has impacted your life?
Sure. My name is Chanda Robinson, and incarceration has impacted my life for a number of years. Starting at age 12, I've been in and out of various institutions and always desiring to be a mother, but that having biological children not being the path that was given me. But I have a heart for those women who do have children as a way to honor my three children who are deceased. So my desire is to help those women be the best version of themselves in order to help as a way to honor my children.
Thank you for that. And I think towards the end of the interview, I'd like to talk just a little bit about how you do that on a daily basis. So
Okay.
I appreciate you sharing that. I think being a mother in prison brings so many emotions, right? For not just us, but for the children as well. Would you guys agree to that?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I can remember as many times the shame being so overwhelming that I didn't know that if I was going to recover from it or not. And I can remember my children being afraid. You know, they see the things on TV and they're wondering, is mom okay? And I can remember even going to the point of every time I would see my kids, I would tell the stories about, oh, it's great in here. You know, I'm getting my education. We get 3 meals, and just trying to make it so that they wouldn't be afraid. And I kind of did overkill on that to the point that my son said one day, well, maybe I need to come in there, you know. So you got to be careful of the messages that we send, you know. But I just kind of like to hear from each of you about the emotions that you experienced as a mom, how that impacted you and how it impacted your children. And then we'll talk about grief as well.
Mm-hmm. I know for myself, my children didn't get to visit me in prison. They visited me when I was at the county jail. And they were young. And at the end of the visit, I remember that being the hardest times for me, is at the end of the visit when they had to leave. I had to go back into my cell, and then they're crying because they had to leave. But then when I went into prison, I was kind of thankful that I didn't have to go through putting them through that again. But I did try to do everything, like send cards, do phone calls, any way that I could to try to fulfill that void, because that's what it was. It was just like a blank space in my life that I already was in prison, but I can't be even a good mother, you know, along with that. So those emotions were strong for me. To the point where, like I said, I was kind of thankful that I didn't see them while I was in prison, because of how hard it was when I was in the jail waiting to be sentenced. So were there ever, and I'll stay with you for a minute, Joy, was there ever any type of communication through letters or phone calls, or that was the
what
only
did that look like?
communication, and we did. We talked, and my mother made sure that she kept some money on my books, or, you know, whatever work I did while I was in prison to get money, I would save it so that I could call. But it still wasn't the same. I mean, but it was the best that we could do. And so I would send cards, and they would do the same, and pictures. They would allow us to, you know, buy pictures of ourselves, and we could send those home. Ran across one the other day, and my son happened to be over there when I ran across that picture, and we were looking back, and he was like, oh, I remember those days, Mom. I remember those days when you would send us these pictures, because you're in these khaki uniforms. You're in the prison uniform, and so you know exactly where you were when you see that picture. So it still brings up memories for us right now that are difficult sometimes, you know, to remember.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Teresa, what about you? Emotions for you and emotions for your children? What kind of communication were you able to have while you were there?
Yeah, Tammy, I experienced a lot of guilt and shame. My first time incarcerated, I didn't have children, but by the second time I got incarcerated, I had just had a child, and so he was 2 when I got locked up. And I did get to see him. My family would bring him about once a month to see me, but just that guilt of not being there with them and being able to raise them. I was very grateful that my mom was raising him, but you know, I remember just the phone calls and the letters, and the letters were simply like stick figures and, you know, copies of our hands, you know, outlining our hands and stuff like that. And I just remember, you know, when I'd receive those, just how precious they were to me. And just how important it was to keep that bond between us. But yeah, I really struggled. Even when I got out, there was so much guilt and shame there that I went right back to what I knew, which was, you know, doing drugs. And so it took a few years. When I got out in 2011 and never looked back, it took a few years to rebuild that relationship with my son. But here I guess it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago when we were driving, and he just looked over and he goes, "Have I told you, Mom, how proud I am of you?" And that was like the most precious thing to me to hear that from my son, because I had put him through so much as a child, and so it was finally that point where he forgives me. Yeah.
It's huge, isn't it?
It is. And then, of course, my daughter was just, she was born, I was incarcerated at the Oklahoma County Jail. And so when I went to prison, I wouldn't get to hold her till she was 6 months old. And so, but I too remember those pictures of being in my grays, because it's gray in Oklahoma, or at the time it was, it's now orange, but anyway, but just being in my grays and those pictures of me and my son and my daughter, and just remembering what God, has done in my life and changed it so I don't have to take those pictures anymore, But that was really, really hard, having your children come in and then leave. But the communication was there, and my family, as much as they didn't want them to go to prison, my mom said, no, the kids need that.
Yeah.
They need to see their mom.
Mm-hmm. I'd really like to hear your very transparent thoughts on this, because as a mom in prison, this is something that I experienced a lot, and maybe you two can kind of to talk about that a little bit. And there were times when I knew that my kids were coming, that I knew, and I even hesitate to say this on camera, but I just feel like maybe somebody could benefit from it. But there would be times that I knew that they were coming, and it was almost a dread because it hurt so bad, And then I would have the additional pain on top of that. It's because I was dreading my family coming. And so trying to sort through those emotions, and you're the only one, you think you're the only one feeling that way. And so what do you think about that?
Well, I know for me it was a struggle, just because I knew once I saw him, I wasn't leaving with them.
Exactly.
And there was some shame and embarrassment. I don't want my children to see me like this, But yeah, there's a lot of validity in that, Tammy, because it was like anxiety, and then when they leave, a little bit of anger, a lot of emotions.
So many. So, Joy, can you talk a little bit about how that felt, those emotions that you experienced while you were in prison, about seeing your family, not seeing your family, and how those things make you feel?
Right. Shameful. I already felt ashamed for being locked up anyway, but especially after, like I said, when I went to the county jail and they would come to see me, it hurt so bad that I was happy that they didn't get to come see me in prison. And then I felt bad about that, because I was feeling that way about my kids, because what kid doesn't want to see their mother? Kids, when they're a certain age, they don't care where you are, what you look like, or anything like that. You just say mother, and they want to see you. Yes. I want to see my mama. I want to hug my mama, but I didn't want them to see me in that situation, and that separation. Once they had to leave, like you said, Teresa, once they had to leave, and they're crying because they have to leave you behind, and then you're crying inside, but you're trying to fight back the tears because you're trying to be strong for them so they don't see mama crying. Then you get back behind the walls and oh man, I'm back here again, and then you just bust up crying.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine some of the grief that maybe you both went through. Teresa, you with having a child in prison and then having to give her up for a period. And Chanda, with you with the loss of your children. And if you would, for our audience, would you guys just unpack that a little bit? Chanda, we'll start with you. Grief in prison, and how do you handle that as a woman?
To tell the truth, I didn't know how. During my first 3 incarcerations, I had already lost 2 children at that time, and drugs and alcohol, and that life was my coping skill. And I never did the work to learn how to deal with my grief in a healthy way. And so whenever I was released, I always went back to the old things. But in this last time that I got in trouble, I actually went to therapy. I dealt with the grief of the loss of my children. By this time, I'd had my daughter Chanda, and she passed away just a few days shy of being 3 months old. But not just the grief in the loss of my children, but I also had to grieve my own childhood.
Yeah.
And to learn how to nurture that little girl inside myself. Yeah. And so the things that have worked for me is to learn how to honor my children. Today they would be 37, 33, and 21. So they wouldn't be children anymore. Yeah. And so it is my life's work to be the best version of myself and someone that they would proud to say that that's my mama. Yeah. Regardless of what she's been through, the crimes and the prison sentences, but that's my mama. And she's doing good stuff to help other mothers be the best version of themselves for their children.
That reminds me of something, and I'll just kind of share it too, because I think that is an amazing story, and that sometimes women in prison sometimes can get so caught up in our situation and in our grief and in our past and in our shame that it's so hard to see past what's going on right now. Mm-hmm. I know that you're a believer.
Yes.
And I know that you have a life scripture.
Yes.
And the story that you just explained is your life scripture.
It is my life scripture.
And so I'd like you to just talk about that for a little bit.
So my life scripture is Romans 8:28, and it says that, and we know that all things are working together for the good of those who love God and are the called according to his purpose. And what I had to learn in that is that he doesn't promise that it's all gonna be good. But if I surrender it to him, all the pain, all the hurt, the trauma, the abuse, the drug addiction, all the things, that if I give it to him, he can turn it into a masterpiece. And I could have a life beyond my wildest dreams. And so while all things haven't been good, they are working together for my good. And the pain that used to drive me away from God now pulls me to him. I use that as my magnet. Because when I'm hurting, I know I can go to my Father and say, I don't know what this is or what you're going to do with it, but here you go. And he works it out. Not that it feels good or that I like it or appreciate it, but he never asked me for that. He asked me to trust him. And that's what I do with my life. And so my life is in his hands, and today is the best that it's ever been.
Me too. It's a good season. We'll talk more about that in a minute too. Teresa, having a child in prison and having to let go.
Yes. Many may know, but I actually was pregnant in the Oklahoma County Jail. And I had my daughter. I was transported to the hospital, and I had my daughter. And then I was able to spend about 24 hours with her. And then my mom came and picked her up. And so I remember returning back to the Oklahoma County Jail and just crying out to the Lord. Lord, I don't want to go back to that. I have 2 precious children. Please don't let me go back to that lifestyle. And so I wouldn't actually get to see my daughter and hold her until she was 6 months old. Once I'd gotten to a prison yard and, my mom brought her to see me. But I just remember how angry I was, and I just thought everybody was so mean. How dare you sentence a lady to prison when she just had a child? I mean, y'all are the cruelest people in the world, and it saved my life.
Right.
But at the time, I was angry, and I just wanted my babies, And so, like I said, I cried out to the Lord, and I just said, please don't let me go back to that. And so when I got to prison, I just was seeking, because so many times when I got there, it was like I just got into more trouble and got more drugs and, misconducts, and was just not doing the right thing, Tammy. And so this time I knew that I wanted to be a mom. And I just took all the classes that I could, and I found Celebrate Recovery. And so I poured in a lot of that guilt and shame, and they helped me work through a lot of that. But it was pretty devastating for me to have a child and then have to be sentenced, and go to prison.
If you can pick one moment, thinking back at that time in your life, and just one thing that got you to that point where you said, okay, this is enough, this is not who I want to be, and that you made that turn. Was that having your child? Was that the point?
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember I had my daughter. I was transported back to the Oklahoma County Jail, and I was just sitting on my bunk, and I was just thinking, I have a little boy, and now I have a daughter, and God has blessed me with these children, and here I am, and so I knew that I didn't want to go back to what I had known and what I had been doing. And so it was in the Oklahoma County jail cell that I cried out to the Lord. And I just said, Lord, there's a lot of junk in me. There's so much that has kept me sick, and I want to work through that. And so, I just surrendered in the Oklahoma County jail. But that particular moment just stands out to me, because it was life-changing for me. I remember finally surrendering and just saying, Lord, I can't do this, but I know you can. So, but yeah.
I don't know if you realize it or not, but in our nation, it's probably 3 to 4% of the women who go to prison go while they're pregnant. And so if you had the opportunity, which you kind of do right now, right here, right, to speak into those women's life, what would you tell them if they were in the same scenario that you just told us about, and they were at a crossroads in their life, and they could either go this way or that way? What would you speak to them?
I think really for me, in my experience, it was surrendering my life to the Lord, and really just looking at what, those beautiful blessings, and saying, God chose me to be their mom. And so I really did everything that I could so that when I did get out, that I would be able to be the kind of mom that the Lord planned for me to be. And so I would say get involved in programs. I mean, if you're struggling with an addiction, get into Celebrate Recovery. It's, the academy classes, we have the academy. That wasn't an option for me, or I would have been all over that, but just all the different courses and classes and things that you can do while you're incarcerated. Do everything you possibly can, because when you walk out that gate, if you don't change while you're behind the fence, it's not going to change magically when you walk out the door.
Absolutely.
And so many people think, oh, this time I'm going to do this, and this time I'm going to do this, and it's going to be so much different. But if we don't work on ourselves while we're there, it won't be different.
Yeah, so true, so true. Being a responsible citizen, I think, is a learned behavior, and it just doesn't magically happen because we got out of prison, right? There was a lot of work that went behind that. You talked about your experience in the county jail and how your transformation and your decision to change happened there.
Yes.
Joy, you talked about your pictures, and both of those things are my testimony as well, right? In the county jail, when I thought my life was absolutely over, I was old, right? Mm-hmm. Old enough to know better, right? And just going back to prison with a brand new 20-year sentence, and I received that envelope full of pictures of kids and their graduation pictures and their birthday pictures and all those things. And I realized in that moment that the common thing in all those pictures was that I wasn't in them, all those missed memories because of an addiction that I wouldn't conquer. And so it was in that county jail moment that I made the decision I'm not going to do this anymore,
Yeah.
And for a long time, I didn't believe that I could make that change because I had been that person for so long, right? I thought I was too old. I thought I had gone too far. I thought I had done too much, that my children would never forgive me. But God. But God. Right?
Won't He do it?
We all can attest to that.
And he began to change everything, and for all of us, right? At that one moment, at that one time, whatever that one moment was for each of us. And so, Joy, talk about that one moment, if you would, for a moment, and then what you did once you made the decision that you didn't want to be the old Joy anymore, but that you wanted to be someone new. What did that look like for
Well,
you?
Tammy, you said it all when you said, but God, because I know that it couldn't have been done without him. And that's what I tell people today. I said, no, my change took place with God. That's the only way that it's going to take place in you, is that you put God first in your life, because then you're going to want to do the right things. You're going to want to be the mother to your children. You're going to want to be that sister or that non-missing family member, or the person that's helping somebody else. So I had to, and my children were just like you, Teresa. That was the reason that I changed my life around. I didn't want someone else raising my children, and they had these horror stories about DHS and the different foster homes that children were going to when the parent was incarcerated. And I was like, oh my God, I don't want that to happen to my children. I got to change. I got to do something. And my dad had, he didn't know, bless his heart. He took my children to DHS when I went to prison because he couldn't keep them. And my children remember that he took them to the DHS doorstep because he couldn't keep them. But thank God, but God, they only had to stay one day. And my mom stepped up and took them. And they tell me about that they remember sitting at that doorstep, and that they stayed all night over somebody else's. They knew that it was foster care, or they know what's going on. So, and then that brings back that guilt and shame again, even after all those years. And so I'm with you until I learn to forgive myself for the things that I had put them through, because they were innocent, and I was selfish. I wanted to do my drugs, and I wanted to do them when I wanted to do them, or what, nothing else mattered. So when I sat down with the Lord, and the Lord grabbed me, I mean, like they say, he never leaves us, we leave him. And I said, Lord, change me. Make me into that person that you want. I'm surrendering to you. Change me. I haven't looked back since. And I tell people right today, the change can be made if you make the decision to make the change first. You have to make that decision, whatever it is, and then look to the Lord and to guide you the rest of the way. Because he says you're going to choose one out of the other, life or death. So which one do you choose? So that's my story.
Okay, thank you for that, Joy.
Tammy, I did want to add, that I did lose custody of my son. And so I had to go back to court, so when I got out, I continued on that right path, and then I was able to go before the judge and show him, how far I had come, and they gave me my son back. But that was something that, in my heart, it was like, I'll never have my son again, and that hopelessness, of losing a child to the system. But God restored that, and God gave me my children back. And so I know that there's many women that have lost their children. And so if I can encourage them and bring them hope that that's not the final verdict.
That's right.
God can do amazing things in our lives and in our children's lives.
Yes.
And so even because you lost custody doesn't mean that you won't have your children again. Absolutely. But you've got to start that change while you're still inside.
That's right.
So that when you do come out, you can go before the judge and show him how you've progressed and how you are a new creation and a new person in Christ. So I just thought I'd share that because I think it would be very helpful, because I know there's been a lot of hopeless women and they're like, but I lost my kids. And yeah, I did too. But God has the final say.
Yeah. So easy in the midst of it to get caught up right in the moment, right, in what's happening today. And I think if we don't have that hope, sometimes we get stuck there. And, not all women in prison may have the same belief system that we do.
Exactly.
And maybe not all of them have a release date. You know, I know, Chanda, you you work in the prisons on a daily basis, right?
Yes.
With the program that Prison Fellowship does called the Prison Fellowship Academy.
Yes, ma'am.
I know you work in a medium security prison where a lot of the women that you mentor and care for have sentences that right now, unless something happens, they'll be there for life.
Yes.
And their parents and their moms, right?
Yes.
How is that for you working with those women, and what do you see on a daily basis in those situations?
So one of the major things that I try to encourage them is that you're a mother regardless of your address, right? And let's work on being the best version of yourself and making sure that you put your best foot forward. And if that means all you can do is phone calls, use the phone calls. And if that means writing letters, and even if you don't know where your children are, write the letters anyway. Because just maybe when that child is old enough to make the decision on their own, to reach out and find their mom, you can have all those letters that you've written over the years that let them know that my mama didn't forget about me, right? But we are, whether we have given biological birth, all mothers, because that's how God created us. And so one of the things that I try to stress to the women that are in the academy is that be the best version of yourself first for yourself, and then let God work out the rest of the details. Let him have his throne, and you do your part, and let him work it out. Because I don't ever want to give anybody the hope that just because you made the change, your children are going to come back, because that may not be the case for everybody. But I would rather them live as though that is the case and it not be true than them live as though it's not the case and lose the chance.
Sure.
Right? So it's always best to put the best foot forward and write letters. Listen, they love crocheting. And even they make these little turtles and rabbits and all kind of stuff. And to the kid, to the mothers, oh, this little dumb rabbit. But to the kid, my mama made this for me. Or even if she didn't make it, she had somebody. It's from my mama. So whatever ways, whether it's coloring, if all you got is crayons and paper, color them something. Just so that they know that their mom is thinking about them and that my mom hadn't forgotten about me. Whether or not you can give it to them immediately or in the hopes that one day you'll get to see them again.
Yeah. I want to kind of talk about that just a little bit more, because as hard as this may sound, or as hard as it might be to swallow, being a mom is not our identity, right?
It is not.
That's not who we are. I mean, it may be a role that we play, but it's not our identity. And so when we try in prison to change for our children's benefits or for our husband's benefits or for the parole benefits, I think sometimes that we fall short in that, and that maybe that change is just a short-term thing. That until we began to change and heal from the inside from all of that shame that we've talked about this morning, that we really are just doing surface level change. Would you guys agree with that?
Absolutely.
Agreed.
And with that thought process, and I know Joy and Chanda, you guys both work a lot with reentry. And so women coming out, let's say we've talked a little bit about the women who are doing life sentences, and now they can still be nurturers from prison, from the prison cell by phone calls and letters. But coming out, it seems to be a lot of the times that the thought process is, oh, I got to get out and get my kids, like tomorrow, right? Get out today, get my kids tomorrow. Talk about that just a little bit. Do you think that's a good plan?
If you don't have anywhere to go or a stable environment, it's not, because that was my thought as well. Is I'm gonna get I got blessed. I got to go to the Exodus house with my children, but that was my plan all along. That was my whole focus, was to get my children. So I stayed in the library just reading on things that I could do and places that services that would help me to be able to get my children back. And if it would have been maybe another circumstance, or I didn't have, if I went back to my old environment, it wouldn't have been good for me or them.
Yeah.
Because I might not have been ready. But God had a plan in my life and had a place for us to be able to go that was a Christian organization. And so if you have a plan and it can be executed, the plan is only good as if it can be executed. And then I would say that would be something that could possibly keep somebody stable and on the right track. Because that was my whole purpose for wanting to get out, was so that I could get my kids. But if you're in an environment where it's not stable and you're around the same people and they're doing the same things, drugs, whatever, drinking, then you have an opportunity to fall back into that trap. And not only that, you're exposing your kids back to it. So it could go either way. But I would say for people getting out, yeah, you want people to have the hope to be able to get their children and want them to be able to, but it has to be the right environment that's healthy for them and for you. And you first, because you're the mother, so you got to be able to lead the train.
It reminds me of when I fly sometimes, and there's a safety presentation that the stewardesses always come out and get, and they're talking about the oxygen masks and when they drop, and what they always say is if you're traveling with someone, put your own oxygen mask on first, right?
Yes,
before you try to help those who are with you. So I use that when I'm thinking about women coming out of prison. Because if I don't get that oxygen on first, if I don't get that foundation laid first, then I can't help anyone else,
That's
right?
right.
And so I think it's a good word to just remind the women not to be in a hurry. Your kids, wherever they are, they're taken care of. They've been taken care of for all those years while you're gone. And so just a few more months could be for the benefit, right? And so I just think it's so important because, again, it's that shame, I've got to get out there and fix it. But until we put our own masks on, there's no way that we're going to be able to fix anybody else's problems. So, Chanda, talk about what you see in your homes and in your experience.
So one of the things that for the RAF, which is the nonprofit that I incorporated on my daughter's 18th birthday as a way to honor her, one thing is that we don't have children in our house. One, for the liability of it, but two is I want the mothers to have a fair chance to get stable for themselves by themselves. Because it's one thing to get out, try to find a job and all that by yourself, but to get out and immediately you got you and two babies and no job, that's just as irresponsible as whatever got you incarcerated. Yeah. So I think the responsible thing is to make sure that you are not only willing, but able. Because willingness is great, but ability is vital, right? And so to be able to know that I have sufficient income, housing, that I'm not taking my children from this stable place that they've been while I've been gone, because that would be selfish. Those are my kids and give them to me to take them from couch to couch to couch. Why would you do that to your child? That's just as irresponsible, again, as what caused you to be taken or removed from their life in the first place. So, and that's a hard conversation to have with a mother, that they're okay where they're at. They've been taken care of. Whether you've been gone for 1 year, 10 years, they've made it. Yeah. Give them a chance to see you in a stable light, standing on your own, because the people who have been caretakers for them, they are going to be a little leery. Yeah. Because by now they've got that, these are my babies, right, even though they didn't give birth to them. And so we want to be able to earn the trust of not only the caretakers of the children, but also of the children, because particularly if you've been in and out and in and out. So how long is it going to last this time? Yeah. Right? And we also don't want a parent out of guilt. Because I've been gone so long, now I'm just going to give you everything. And that's also irresponsible parenting. And so there's a lot that goes into it, and the thought process is that sooner is not always better.
I agree.
I wanted to speak on that as well, Tammy, because when I did get out of prison, I didn't get my children back immediately. I went to my grandmother's home. I got a job. I had a few things in place before I got my daughter back. And then about a year later, I was able to get my son back. But there was a lot of work that went into it, because I truly believe if I had had both my children, the minute I walked out of those gates, I would have been completely overwhelmed, completely out of my element. I had never been a parent before. I didn't know the first thing about it. And so I really think just having that time to get on my feet and continue to work on me so that I could be the best version of me for my children. So yeah, I didn't get mine back immediately. It was a process, and I praise God for that, because like I said, I don't think I would have made it, because it was so overwhelming, I mean, everything's so new. You're incarcerated for any length of time. When you come out, things have changed.
Right.
And so I was very grateful for that time to kind of get on my feet before I brought my children back into my life.
That's good. That's good. I like that. So everyone here at the table today in this discussion, each one of us have experienced multiple incarcerations, right?
Yes,
all
absolutely.
behind addictions that we got caught up in at a very early age. When I was incarcerated, I would get visits from my sons a lot of the times, and I would make him all these promises. But while I was making these promises, I wasn't doing anything to back the promises up. In other words, I wasn't doing anything to change while I was incarcerated. And so I would get out, and I would come right back in. And I would tell them, when Mom gets out, everything's going to be okay. And Mom did get out, and it wasn't okay. And she went right back in, right? And so I see now what that did to my children. And we have made great progress since my time home with rebuilding relationships, but it hasn't been easy, right? Has it been easy for you, Joy, to rebuild those relationships? What did you have to do in order to get from the woman who was incarcerated as a mom to where you are today?
I had to build their trust back up in me, because they didn't trust me anymore. Even though it had only been one time that I was incarcerated from the time I had my children, they didn't trust me. They didn't know if something was going to happen again. Are you going to get arrested? Because they saw me get arrested. They saw when all the police cars came and arrested me and took Mama away. So I had to build trust back up in them and stability in our lives, because like I said, they had been to DHS that time when my dad took them when I first got incarcerated, and then my mom took them from there, and then here I get out and they're back with me now. Environment has changed again at a young age. That's impactful to children. And so they wanted to know that I was going to be stable, and that they could trust that I was going to take care of them. And it was hard for me, because I was an ex-felon, or I returning citizen, and I had a lot of hurdles that I had to jump over to get to that stable point. And that would be a whole nother show if we talked about all the different hurdles that you have to jump with a criminal background record. Yes. But yes, I would say yes, just that it was very hard, but it was something that I knew had to be done. And like I tell everybody, and I'll keep saying it, Jesus Christ brought me through it, the love of the Lord, because we stayed in church, and we stayed in our word, and we built our relationship together with the Lord. Me and my children did. And so that's what brought us together, to where we could be trusting each other, and I could be open and honest with them, and they could with me.
I remember, Teresa, you said earlier that you had to build back the trust. I think it was you that said that, right? And I can remember when I first got home, I have two sons, two very different men, children when I went in, listened to all the lies all their life. And so when I came out, I thought, okay, Mom's home, let's do this thing, right? But they had gone on with their lives, understandably so. I was gone for 18 years, right? They had families of their own and all those things, and it was like, I think I would equate it to like there was a merry-go-round going around, and I was trying to find a place to jump on it, and I just didn't know where to as far as their life goes, right? And so it was really easy to want to give up during all of that, right? Because I didn't feel like I fit. I wasn't sure that they wanted me. But I just remembered some of the classes that we had talked about in prison, some of the classes that I had participated in prison that just kept reminding me, don't give up, right? And so I would continue to call, even though they wouldn't return my calls. I would continue to visit, even though sometimes when I went, one of my sons would get up and go in the other room. You know, he let me in, but the conversation was hard. And so I think if I was speaking into the women that may be getting ready to go out and try to build relationships with their families, I think I would say just don't give up, right?
Don't give up.
That trust isn't just a thing where you can say, trust me, right? We've said that before. But I think it's an action that we have to show them, hey, it's different now. I'm different now. And to honor them enough to let it happen in their time. Right, because we have a tendency to say, come on, trust me now, right? Trust me now.
Sure.
And I had to step back and I had to see, you know, they did trust me at one point, and I stepped on that. And so now I'm going to love them enough to let them do it in their time. And it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen in a year. It took 5 strong years of me continuing to be that steady thing, that steady phone call, that steady text, until they began to see maybe just this time it's different. And I had the same experience, Teresa, when my sons both told me, Mom, we're proud of you. We're proud of what you're doing. We're proud of who you are, you know. And I get the opportunity with Prison Fellowship to make these videos, and I'll catch them watching them on their phones, sharing them with their friends, you know. Yeah. And I just am so thankful because it all came about in time, in God, because this time I said I'm not going to give up, right? And so I know the same thing for all of you guys. We're here because Prison Fellowship has given us this opportunity. And so let's talk about that for a moment. I know each of us has a role that we serve Prison Fellowship with, serve the incarcerated women with. And so let's just kind of open the floor, Chanda. I know you have a big role with Prison Fellowship. Tell us about that, will you?
So currently I work at the Mabel Bassett Correctional Facility as a program counselor for the academy, the Tier 2 Academy. And we meet with the ladies for about 10 hours per week in a group setting, and then for at least a half an hour once a month. So we get to spend quite a bit of time with them. And in this year-long program, we get to watch them run up into obstacles and over hurdles, and I don't want to do that, and then have the breakthrough. And it is just amazing to me that, so these are grown women. Everybody in the academy is at least 18 years old, but they are my babies, you know. And I know I'm not supposed to claim them, but they're my babies. And so I feel like that this is God's way of allowing me to live out the promise of seeing a barren woman. Because I don't have biological children that I get to raise, but I have access to every woman in there is somebody's child, right? And so if I can sow seeds in their lives, this can go on for generations and generations and generations, can be affected by the work that I have the opportunity to do right now through Prison Fellowship at that facility. So I don't take my job lightly, and it's not just a paycheck. I'm trying to sow some seeds of legacy for different lives for generations to come.
Good for you, Chanda. How many incarcerations?
4.
4 incarcerations? How many?
As an adult.
Yeah.
I started as a teenager in Arkansas.
How many years of incarceration?
Altogether, it totaled about 7.5 at different times. And I've been out now since October of 2009 in the very same prison where I would have served that life without parole sentence that the state statute said I was eligible for. I get to walk in the front door every day and check out my keys to go unlock some doors. And so God is absolutely amazing. Yeah, so I get to work there instead of live there.
Right? So I'd like you to look at the camera right now, and the women that are watching you, speak into their lives. What do you say to them before we close up today?
Ladies, one of the things that I want you to remember is that God has a plan and a purpose for your life, and it doesn't change based on your decisions or the judge's decisions. God's plan is absolutely perfect, and I would just ask that you would surrender to it. Give it all to Him and let Him take the broken pieces and create a masterpiece.
Thank you, Chanda. Teresa, what are you doing for Prison Fellowship?
Well, I am the Oklahoma field director. And so what I do is I oversee the Tier 1 academies in our state. I do Hope events, and then I help out with Angel Tree as well. But I just remember, the volunteers that brought those programs in to the prison, and I just remember this glow that they had about them. And I just remember, I think maybe one day I might want to come back in and share my story. Not knowing at the time, that God was really doing a work in me and was preparing me for a job with Prison Fellowship. And I laugh about it because I'm like, who in the world did prison time and then fights to get back in through COVID, right? But I was fighting to get back in there. But I just absolutely love my job. I love working with the men and women and being able to share my own experience and kind of bring them hope as well. But it's a blessing. I've been with Prison Fellowship since April of 2019 now. So, yeah.
How many incarcerations?
3.
3. How many years?
I don't know. I've never really sat down and added up. I would say close to 10 probably. Yeah.
3 incarcerations, 10 years, and now the Oklahoma field director for Prison Fellowship, going in, changing lives. Right?
Yes. Yes.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Miss Joy,
Hi,
what's your connection with Prison Fellowship?
I'm a Justice Ambassador volunteer, and we meet with the lawmakers here in Tulsa, and we go down to the state capitol, and there's Prison Fellowship. They draw up some help with some of the laws that help people that are incarcerated and or people that are released from prison to make the laws a little bit less stringent for them. So Prison Fellowship I've also been a member since 2019, yes. So I thought that was something good in common. Yeah. And so they have been a great part of my life. Even before I became a volunteer, they used to help my mother with my children during the Angel Tree program.
Oh, yeah.
So Prison Fellowship has always been dear to my heart. And so I volunteer as much as I can, and I come out to anything that they have that I'm available to come to, because they have helped me to learn ways that I can help our community to help people when they return home from prison.
Mm-hmm. Can you speak into the ladies? What's one word you would leave with them?
Love yourself and love the Lord. And forgive yourself. It's hard for ladies sometimes to forgive themselves, and I would say to be able to do that would allow you to open up your heart so that others can love you, and you'll be able to do worlds of things as long as you let the Lord lead you. Thank you.
Teresa, did you speak into the camera?
Yes. Ladies, I'd like to just share with you that secrets keep us sick. And so when we start working on things that have happened to us in our lives, and we start working through those things and we bring them to the light, God can do amazing things in your life. He did it for me. He can do it for you.
And so I think we're going to end up today just by, personally, I wanted to say that my name is Tammy Franklin, and I am the Associate Director of Academy Operations for Prison Fellowship. I was released from prison in 2015. In 2018, I was hired as a program manager with Prison Fellowship, where I've been serving ever since. And I think the message that I want you to hear in all of that, not look at me, but to realize that it doesn't matter what you've done, it doesn't matter how far you think you've gone, it's not too late. I was 56 when I was released from prison, and the season in my life is better than anything that I've ever seen. So what we want you to do, we want to offer you hope. If you will use your time of incarceration to heal the hurts, to overcome the shame, and to realize that your story is not over. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that video, and I want to encourage you, please subscribe to Prison Fellowship's YouTube channel. You can be on the lookout for more content all year round.